I remember a time, and I'm aging myself a little bit here, when I was in college, that I would sit for hours on what was really the only online source to look at really cool used cars, collector cars, even some modern cars, and that was eBay Motors. There was no Bring a Trailer at the time, or Facebook Marketplace, or any of the tools we have now. Your options were eBay Motors. I think Auto Trader might have had a website at the time, but it was not very good. I would rather just buy the Auto Trader magazine down at the convenience store, which I did for many years. And then I think a lot of us, especially car people, would buy a DuPont registry at the airport before you got on a flight and sit and look for hours at cars you can't afford. And all the crazy ads, like, I'll never forget there was an ad in there for a machine that would 24 karat gold plate metal. Like, okay, cool. I mean, that was a thing in the 90s, remember? If you had a Lexus with gold-plated emblems, you were a baller. But there's two cars in particular I remember from back then that I always thought to myself, man, as a poor college kid, if I had some money, I would buy one. Even if I couldn't afford to keep it maintained enough to drive. I'd sit it in the garage and just look at it. And that was the Lamborghini Countach and the Ferrari Testarossa. You know, they kind of go hand in hand. For the 80s kid that I am. And don't quote me on this, but I remember seeing Countaches in the $55,000 to $65,000 range, maybe 65 to 70 for a really nice one. And who would have thought all these years later what they would be worth now? Crazy money. Testarossas haven't shot up as much as the Countach. Now, I think Testarossas, Ferrari sold a few more Testarossas than Countaches, but they were in the $45,000 to $55,000 range, and they're over 100 now. There's quite a few cars that's happened to over the years, mainly, you know, the high-end Italian dream cars, I get it. And what I want to talk about today, and please, this is not financial advice, so don't take it as such, but 5 cars that I think under 30,000, and I'm going to do another video later on for cars over 30, but 5 cars I think at the very least you could buy now and not lose your money on. Something you could buy, enjoy, and maybe not take it as an appreciating investment, but something that will hold its value and you can enjoy for years to come. Before I get started, I said in my last video, I'm not going to beg for likes and subscribes, but I kind of let the channel sit for a while. I was unfortunately pretty sick for almost a year, but I'm back. I feel good and I'm looking to revive my channel. This is just a fun thing I do because I love cars, and if it turns into something more, great. But it would really mean a ton if you guys would like the video, if you'd like it. Subscribe, please, because I'm going to be consistent now with uploading stuff. I got a lot of cool stuff planned. And especially in this video, because I know there's going to be some people that think I'm an idiot for my choices, maybe love my choices, or can point out things that maybe a car I forgot. Please leave me a comment. I read every single one of them. So that would be wonderful. And I appreciate it very, very much. And if you haven't seen my latest video, I put a lot of work into it. I'm pretty happy with it. It was a drive and a review and kind of the history of my good friend's Porsche Panamera GTS. I'll put a link on the screen right now and in the description. So please check it out if you have a chance. And again, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. So now that that's out of the way, let's go to my number 5 pick. Now, a lot of people are going to think I'm insane. There's a method to my madness. And my number 5 pick is the Jaguar XJS. In particular, the last generation of the car. I would say probably 93 to 96, 96 being the last year. Now, that car in particular has a reputation, poorly built, not that fast, but I think that's all surface level. I don't disagree. The 80s, early 80s British Leyland cars with the V12 and Lucas Electronics can be an absolute nightmare. And finding somebody that's competent that will actually work on one, good luck. That being said, they made the car for 21 years. And I think it aged gracefully. You know, everybody hated it at first because this replaced the Jag E-Type. And I mean, the Jag E-Type is considered one of the most beautiful cars ever made. And people hated the XJS. Over time, that hatred kind of waned a little bit. And as the years went on, they produced over 115,000 of these things in over 21 years. Towards the end of the run, Ford had taken over Jaguar. You would hope after 21 years, they had figured out how to make the thing. Reliability was not bad, and they introduced that beautiful 4-liter straight six engine, which I have heard is very reliable. I've seen some for sale with over 200,000 miles on them. Now, prices, I'm going to put a graph up right now of some research I did on Bring a Trailer sold auctions. So this is just a small metric that I'm using for this. But they have kind of hovered around the $10,000 to $15,000 range for a nice one. But they're slowly ticking up a little bit. Probably because nicer cars are getting harder to find. And looking back on this car, it's really beautiful. It's a beautiful car. Now, it's quirky. The interior is incredibly small for a car this big. In the United States, we never got the manual version of the car, which if that 4-liter with a manual would be amazing, if you ask me. Most of the cars we got here in the States were convertibles, and I'm fine with that. The coupes go for quite a bit more money, but I think if you could find a really well-maintained, and it doesn't have to be crazy low mileage, 50, 60,000 miles and they're out there, you can find a really nice later 90s version. They don't have the inset disc brakes like the earlier cars did, which was a Jag thing, and it was quirky, and they went to traditional brakes, and I think that might have been when Ford took over. But you can find these cars around $12,000, $13,000, $15,000 in really nice shape. From what I understand, again, they made them 21 years. Parts are not that hard to find. They can be a little pricey. There's no doubt about that. It is a British car. There's a community of people that just love these cars and are very helpful and very set on keeping these things running for years to come. I think they've aged gracefully. I think it's a beautiful car. I think it's quirky and unique, something different. And I don't care who you are. If somebody sees you driving one, they know exactly what it is. So my number 5 pick is the Jaguar XJS. All right, this next pick for number 4. I went back and forth on this one. This one might piss some people off. So again, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. And probably piss people off even more that I'm going to lump them in the same category as number 4. But for number 4, I'm picking the 3rd Gen Camaro and the Fox Body Mustang. And here's why. There was a time when you could find these cars in every newspaper, classifieds, Auto Trader magazine, online, eBay Motors, Craigslist for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. Now, it didn't mean it was a show queen. Most of them had been modified on their second engine. Some of them had rust issues, but they were out there. And these cars are not necessarily hard to work on. A lot of them have been in accidents, lived hard lives. But for not a lot of money, you could have a pretty cool pony/muscle car from the 80s and 90s era. But then something happened, and I'm going to blame it on cash for clunkers. A lot of these cars that were sitting as projects or barely running got traded in for cash for clunkers because they sat for $3,000, $4,000 and nobody bought them. As the scene kind of changed after the Fast and Furious and the whole 90s, early 2000s JDM tuner scene became popular, people weren't really into 3rd Gen Camaros and Mustangs anymore. But as these cars started to dry up, people kind of looked back on them fondly and they started to go up in value. Now, here's some sale numbers from, again, I'm using Bring a Trailer just as a general litmus test for these numbers. But the Fox Body Mustang in particular has skyrocketed in value. And the irony is Ford outsold General Motors over 1 million units in the total production of the Fox Body Mustang. Now, it did run a couple years longer than the 3rd Gen Camaro, but they sold over 2.5 million of the things. Now, a lot of them were 4 cylinders, but my personal favorite, the Notchback 5.0, has gone up a lot in value. Some of them might be over the $30,000 mark, so take that for what it's worth. And it's hard to judge on originality on these numbers with these 2 cars in particular because so many have been modified. And if it's done tastefully, I don't think that's a bad thing. I know the hot thing now is Coyote swapping a 5.0. The Camaro, on the other hand, they had a wide range of engines. The old Iron Duke, 90 blistering horsepower, all the way up to the 5.7 L98 that was a detuned Corvette motor. And they made about 245 horsepower, but they had a lot of torque. I have heard some things, and I want to even reference it. I think it was a Car Wizard video talking about parts for the 3rd gen Camaro are hard to find now, some certain parts. And I'm like, really? I mean, they sold well over 1 million of these things. But I think if you find a clean, not necessarily all original, but a clean, well-maintained, tastefully modded 3rd gen Camaro or Fox Body Mustang, you could have a lot of fun with it. You can do a lot of things with it. And I think at this point, you're not going to lose money on it. All said and done, I think these are fun cars. I don't think it's a bad buy. If you find a nice one that's not totally butchered. And I don't think these things are going to go down in value because just so many of them are wrecked, totaled, destroyed, or got sold for cash for clunkers. All right, moving right along here. This one was an easy choice, but not as easy as you think because the prices are shooting up. Now you can still find them under 30,000, but it has to be the S2000, the Honda S2000, particularly the AP1 model, which was 99 to 2003 with the really high revving 9,000 RPM engine. The AP2 cars are quite a bit more expensive, and I could find very few under 30, so I'm just going to focus on the AP1. This was Honda's 50th anniversary celebration car. I think most people absolutely love these, and I've had the pleasure of driving one. A good friend of mine had one. He bought it brand new, and I spent the day with it. I'm a pretty tall guy. I'm 6'3". With the top up, it's a little cramped for me. With the top down, and thankfully it was beautiful South Florida weather. Amazing. Just an amazing driving experience. They were quick. The F20C engine had about 240 horsepower, 153 foot-pounds of torque, so not a lot of torque, but that 9,000 RPM redline was incredible. 0 to 60 in about 5.5 seconds, but you had to rev the hell out of it to get it there, which is one of the fun parts about it. And the 6-speed manual in that car was probably the best manual transmission I've ever had the pleasure of shifting. It had 50-50 perfect weight distribution. It only weighed 2,800 pounds. And at the time, it wasn't a lot of money. You know, it was $32,000, $33,000, which, I mean, it is expensive with inflation, but for what you got, incredible. Now, the F20C engine does have some known issues. Oil consumption, I've heard, is an issue with those. You really need to stay on top of that. Make sure you check the oil all the time. They also had a timing chain tensioner issue. So you got to stay on top of that timing chain, preventative replacements. And there's, I think, a lot of aftermarket support now that is popular that will fix the issue. I also read something about valve retainers. The early AP ones use weaker valve retainers and they replace those with an upgraded version on the AP2 cars. So I think a lot of S2000 people replace those. They have aftermarket retainers, and maybe even Honda had an upgraded version for the AP1 engine. So yeah, otherwise, I don't have much else to say. It's hard to argue. Honda S2000. If you can find one under 30 that's not been wrecked and doesn't have a gazillion miles on it, it's been well maintained, buy it. All right, my number 2 pick. And any of you that follow my channel know it's going to be a little bit of a bias for me. But my number 2 pick is the Nissan Z32 300ZX. So here's the thing about the Nissan Z. It was technically the first of the 90s Japanese supercars to start the big trend that followed with the upgraded, the Mark IV Supra, the twin turbo RX-7, the 3000 GT might have came out around the same time, but technically the Z32 debuted in Japan in 89, 90 in the US. Personally, I think it's one of the most beautiful cars ever made. It's timeless styling. Everybody loves them. They were fast, even the naturally aspirated versions. 222 horsepower, about 200 foot-pounds of torque, 0 to 60 in a manual under 7 seconds. Again, in 1989, not too shabby. And then came the mighty VG30DE twin turbo engine with 300 horsepower and 283 foot-pounds of torque. Depending on the day and the weather, you could tick the things off at 0 to 60 in like 5.2 seconds, maybe even quicker. Mid 13 quarter miles, top speed, 155 miles an hour, had all sorts of amazing tech, super high-gus 4-wheel steering, which nobody really liked, but it was very innovative at the time. My family having owned a Z32, I can tell you the materials were incredible, very well built, beautifully painted, high quality, everything you touched. It was just an amazing car. Handling, they were a little heftier than a lot of the other Japanese quote unquote supercars at the time, but I never felt that they were too heavy. But compared to modern cars, they're light. They haven't skyrocketed like the Mark IV Supra or the RX-7. And I think I know why. Fast and Furious made those cars go stratospheric. I love the Mark IV Supra, but some of the prices they're fetching, I think is ridiculous. You can pick up a really, really nice twin turbo Z that hasn't been modified in the mid-20s. Now, the caveat to that, another reason I don't think they've gone through the stratosphere in price, is the engine itself. It was very, very advanced for the time, but they crammed a very big V6 into a very small engine bay. There is not a lot of room to work on them. They are tricky to work on. If you can't do it yourself, you really need to find someone who knows what they're doing with these cars. And nowadays that can be tricky. I don't think they're necessarily unreliable. They never were when they were new. They didn't have major known faults. It's something to think of. Some really, really clean versions of these cars are, touching $40,000, $50,000. But you can still find one in the 20s. And I don't think you're going to ever lose money on it. I think it's a special car, and you can have a lot of fun with it. It's fast, even by modern standards. You can do some very, very light tuning and get a lot of power out of that car. Just find one that hasn't been too, quote unquote, fast and furious. There's enough out there. Nissan sold quite a few of these cars. Anyway, that's my number 2 pick. Z32 300ZX, particularly the twin turbo. But you know what? The naturally aspirated cars are great too, and you can get them for a lot less money. All right, before we get to my number 1 choice, I'm going to mention some honorable mention cars here. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but these are cars I think are probably good buys. Maybe not enough to make the top 5, but here we go. I think any Mercedes 126 chassis, particularly the 560 SEC, the pillarless coupe, beautifully made cars, very, very timeless styling. When Mercedes built Mercedes, they've creeped up in value. The problem with these is they all have crazy high mileage. And if they don't, they're crazy expensive. But if you can find a nice 560 SEC with not 300,000 miles on it for not crazy money, really cool car, timeless, probably not going to lose money on it. Next, Toyota MR2. Always like the MR2. Kind of all over the board. It's hard to find a really clean, unmodified one nowadays. Prices are in the 20s. Not the most desirable Toyota, but a quirky, cool car, and I wouldn't pass on one. Also going to mention the Buick Grand National and the Regal T-Type, that whole body. I thought about putting it in the list. I debated swapping that for the number 4 Fox body and 3rd gen Camaro. There was a time you could find these in really nice shape for high teens, low 20s. They're a tricky car to work on. They're finicky. Most have been modified. That's kind of what they're all about. I'm not even bothered by that. G-body cars are known for rust, so you really got to watch out for rust. And let's be blunt, the Kendrick Lamar thing blew the prices up of these cars. The Super Bowl. I've seen 87 Grand Nationals that are, 60, 70,000 miles, well kept, that probably would have sold for 22, 23,000 2 or 3 years ago. People are wanting 35 for them. I love the Grand National. I love the Regal T-Type. There's some really cool. That's actually a more rare car than the Grand National. And again, I'm not talking GNX here. I'm talking just normal Grand National. But you want the intercooled one. Prices are getting high. They're out there. If you want to take a risk on one, I don't think it's a bad investment. It's just going to be hard to find one. And lastly, got to throw my love to my 300ZX, the Z31 300ZX, 84 to 89. I owned one. Love these cars. They're not crazy fast by modern standards by any stretch, but they were for the time. The turbo cars were quick. Really cool. 80s digital dash. I personally like the styling. I sound like a broken record, but I think cash for clunkers destroyed a lot of these cars. Used to see these on the road all the time. They were $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. Now people want $10,000, $12,000, $15,000. Great car. No way I'm paying $15,000 for a naturally aspirated Z31 with 160,000 miles. And that's what some people want. And I don't think they're going to get it. That being said, if you can find the right car, turbo car, clean, hasn't been in an accident, everything mostly original, I don't think it's a bad buy. It's not going to be as desirable as a Z32. The big problem with these cars is I've heard it's getting really hard to find parts for them, which is shocking to me because Nissan sold a ton of these things. And Nissan Japan has incredible support for the Skyline community, believe it or not, but not the Z31. So keep that in mind if you ever find one, that parts may be tricky. All right, we're down to our number one pick. If you made it this far, thank you again so much for watching, listening to me ramble about cars I like. It's amazing to me. I have one video about my friend's Mercedes, which I'll link here, that I've got almost 100,000 views on. Tons of interaction. People really like that video. 97+% of the views on that video are not subscribers. So please, if you like what I'm doing, throw me a subscribe and a like. It would mean the world to me. Here we go. Number one pick, and I stand firm on this, the Chevrolet C5 Z06. There was a time, a couple years ago, you could find these cars high teens, low 20s all day long. You have to think of the demographic that bought these cars. Older people, didn't drive them a lot. Some of them were bought for track use at the time, but you know the demographic for a C5 Corvette. There's really nothing to not like about it. I think it's a beautiful car. It's got pop-up headlights. It's got a beautiful 5.7 liter V8 and a manual transmission. What else do you want? In 2001, the first year, the engines had about 385 horsepower. They bumped the power a bit the next year to 405. So you probably want to look for the 2002 to 2004 models. Prices are creeping up. They are still available under 30. Now they're going to be a little higher mileage. If you find some garage queen with 5,000 miles on it, it's not going to be $30,000. If it is, buy it. Buy it and don't look back. Paint schemes, I think in like 03, 04, they had the really cool blue paint with the red and gray striping. Those are going to be a little bit more money. But this is a no-brainer. If I had 30 grand laying around right now, I would go buy one today. They're fast. They're not unreliable. The biggest problem with these cars is the clutch. When you have to replace the clutch, it's a major operation. You have to drop the whole rear end because of the torque tube yeah, it's a big deal. But just prepare for that. I've heard it's $3,500 to $4,000 with a really good tech that knows what they're doing. Maybe less, maybe more. I don't know. But it's a Chevy. It weighs 3,100 pounds and it has 400 horsepower. It did 170 miles an hour, a mid 12-second quarter mile, all for under $30,000. You can't go wrong with this car. I don't know much else to say. It's a winner. They're going to go up in value. Now, that's not saying buy one and lock it away in the garage. Enjoy this car. Drive it. It's beautiful. But I just don't think you can go wrong with the C5 Z06. Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear some feedback. Let me know about this whole list. This has been really fun. I love this kind of stuff. I had a lot of fun looking up research and trying to find photos and stuff for these cars. I could do this every day. So thank you all so very much for hanging out with me and listening to my silly list of top 5 cars I think are worth buying under $30,000. All right, everyone have a great day. We'll see you soon.